beautiful day to you out there. The program is The Dailies on Echo Television International Uranium Station, where we bring you news that are actually dropping in our papers, especially one that is making most of the paper. It's the president declaring state of emergency for food and security. So we'll love you to sit tight as we take you down through some of the stories that will be on the paper. I am Seda Elisha Dasham, and I'll be doing this alongside Rachel Tanzei. Good morning.
Morning, morning.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great, thank you, Rachel. Quite a lot of the paper, so let's not keep our viewers waiting. Yes. We'll be starting with the first paper. Please do remember that we are live on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can follow us there and also drop your thoughts and your comment on any of the story that is of interest to you. And Rachel will be taking us through the first paper.
On the Matrix newspaper, DSS charges Emefiele to court. Obi is now IPOP spokesman, coming from Simon Epa. You can find the details on page 4. Putin already lost war in Ukraine, Biden says. You can find the details of that statement on page 8. And the English-Nigerian player Dele Alli reveals he was sexually abused at age 6. You can find the details on page 20. Diaspora remittance, while CBN announces Naira payout option. The writer following the story releases list of CBN approved IMTOs. See full list in the paper. Drop in diaspora remittance further worsens forest shortage. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. The big story on the Matrix newspaper, anxiety over food security. Tinubu declares state of emergency. Federal government to deploy savings from fuel subsidy removal to agricultural sector. Releases fertilizers, grains to farmers, households to mitigate effects of subsidy removal. 12 million families to get 8,000 naira as palliative for 6 months. You can find the details on page 2. Ifeanyi Ubah reveals Southeast leaders plan to meet Tinubu for Kanu's release. NCAA orders suspension of Max Air B737 flights indefinitely. You can find the details on page 8. Marketers demand suspension of value-added tax on diesel. And at the downside of the paper, on tax removal, agents project 15% rise in car import. You can find the details on page 13. We have pictures showing the Chief of Defense Staff, that is the new service chiefs that have been confirmed. So we have Chief of Defense Staff Major General C.G. Musa, Chief of Army Staff Major General T.A. Alabaja, and we have Chief of Naval Staff Rear Admiral E.A. Ogala, and Chief of Air Staff AVM H.B. Abubakar. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On Friday, leadership newspaper, Tinubu battles food inflation, declares state of emergency, with the rider orders immediate release of fertilizer and grains, creates commodity board to stabilize food prices, and seek approval for $800 million World Bank loan. You can see more of this explainer on page 4. 346 killed in 8 Plateau State local government areas. You can start reading more of that issue on the front page and continue more on page 7. Also, Service Chief expert tax president on no amnesty for bandit. We saw that from yesterday where the army kicked against that. And so we're having more of that story on the paper today. So you can read that on page 7. Max Air suspension won't affect pilgrims' airlifts. This is coming from the NAHCON. Also, we have CISLAC, others call for state anti-corruption agency, which you can find on page 6. And the SSS say we have charged Emefiele to court, so you can read more of that story inside the paper. We have on trending, Tinubu seek approval of 500 billion naira for palliative, which has been approved by the House yesterday, and reps to investigate $4 billion crude oil theft. You can read these 2 stories on page 2, and that's all on Friday leadership.
On Daily Sun newspaper, alleged rights violation, again court dismisses Kanu's suit against DSS, declines request to wear Isiagu attire in custody. You can find the details on page 4. The big story on Daily Sun, as federal government unveils subsidy removal incentives, National Assembly to get 70 billion naira, poor family 8,000 naira from 500 billion naira palliative. The rider following the story, 35 billion naira earmarked for judiciary It's continuation of APC's scam, says Atiku. You can find the details on page 6. NYSC certified Umbas certificate, INEC witness tells tribunal. Department of State Services charges ex-CBN Governor Emefiele to court. Federal government to establish modern ranches in collaboration with state as president declares state of emergency on food security. Tinubu Bello Hill Shoyinka at 89 described Nobel laureate as inspiration. You can find the details on page 28. Gunmen on rampage in Delta kill officer chase others into swamp. Senate grills confirms service chiefs. The details can be found on page 6. I'll rescue Nigeria from vested interest, a statement coming from the President Tinubu. At the downside of the paper, we are dying, Plateau IDPs cry out. You can find the details on page 19. We have a picture story showing President Bola Tinubu and his Chief of Staff, Femi Bajabiamila, with all progressive Congress women leaders in 36 states and in Abuja, led by National Women Leader Betta Edu in Abuja yesterday. That's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
Sure, before we move further, I'd like us to make a few comments on the big story.
Yes.
It's quite, it's emotional for me, and it's quite, no, it doesn't really sit well with me. Because looking at the big story where the federal government unveiled subsidy removal incentives.
Yes.
And then on the incentive, we're seeing that National Assembly to get 70 billion naira supplementary budget.
Yeah.
Of course, we know that before then, already on the budget, there are a lot of things that were given to the National House of Assembly. So, of course, supplementary budget, so to say. And then here we're seeing that poor families to get 8,000 naira
8,000.
for the next 6 months.
Yes.
That is what the president said. Yesterday, you will recall that on the paper, we're being told that the president said that help is coming soon, so Nigerians should relax. He's working towards that. That was when he asked for the 500 billion naira
Yes.
palliative for Nigerians. But my question right now is the fact that 8,000 naira every month, we're talking about 12 million homes, according to the paper. About 12 million Nigerians will actually benefit from this 8,000 naira because they're targeting the poor of the poorest and then also targeting people who are having low income. Of course, I know the government know how everybody's net worth is annually and all of that. But my question is 8,000 naira, Richard, in a month. What would 8,000 naira do? And no wonder the organized labor said that this is laughable. And they're really finding this funny and not funny at the same time. In the sense that, how are you telling Nigerians that you're going to be giving them 8,000 naira per month? We're looking at pushing and increasing minimum wage. Richard, is more like you giving me a cup of water rather than giving me a well where I can always get the water I need to drink. And I said, Lily, if you recall yesterday, I said the problem we're having in this country is the fact that rather than actually looking for how to teach Nigerians how to fish, we keep giving them fish. When we know the problem is to uproot the tree, we keep breaking the branches, and we know that new trees will still grow, or new branches will still grow eventually. But it's still the tree is still poisonous. So right now, I do not know what the government is intending to do. We're still seeing another fresh 800 billion naira loan separately from both houses. But my concern right now is that we need to think for the long-term, solution rather than the short-term. It seems like we're short-sighted when it comes to issues like this. We're supposed to see the future. Okay, for this, that's 6 months, that's from July till December. What now happened 2024 from January? Are we going to look for another loan again to give Nigerians? So I really do not know what the government intend by doing this. A lot of Nigerians have come out to air their views, saying the fact that let's take a look at the senators and even the both chambers, the green and red chambers. Take a look at the allocation being given to them, their allowances. They even have hardship allowances, even before the hardship in Nigeria.
Yes,
talking about they have food allowances, household allowances,
the
allowances on almost everything.
For everything, yes.
And then you now come back to Nigerians that you use their tax money to actually benefit yourself and say you are giving them 8,000 naira per month. Let's be fair and be honest. Is this just on Nigerians? Is this what the elected leaders into office to do? this is really not right. This is, in fact, personally, it doesn't sit well with me looking at this thing. But you know, the way things that they say a half bread is better than none at all. But forgive me,
It's not
we
up to
need a
half,
full bread.
Sele.
We already seen on the paper, IDPs are crying.
Yes.
Why? Because insecurity have chased them out of their ancestral ground. You can't even go to the farm to do anything. And in the IDPs, they're going through a lot of hardship. I'm going to talk about harassment, molestation. There was a time a friend of mine was telling me that from first-hand information, she got the fact that one of her cousins who was working in the IDPs was surprised to see that even some of these herdsmen do come, or bandits, whatever name we give them, will come to the IDPs to charge their rechargeable lamps and their. And I was like, seriously, where the security agents, when such a thing happened under the nose of our security agency, is really very sad. So I do not know what we intend to do about this 8,000 naira per month, but it really doesn't sit well with me, Rachel.
Sela, it can't sit well with anybody. And you said half bread is better than none. Sela, this is not up to half bread. It's not even quarter. It's not even a slice. It's like a pinch. It's like that part you try to poison a rat with, and then you just pinch some, you poison it, and then you give the rat. It's like a bait. It doesn't feel like half bread in any way, Sele. And when you say you're targeting the poor, and then you are giving our lawmakers 70 billion. So are you trying to tell me that they are poorer than the poorest in Nigeria? Because that's the only way this will make sense to me, because just as we know, they already have allowances for virtually everything. None of them is fueling their cars from their pockets. None of them are paying for their domestic staff. They have allowances for virtually everything, including hardship, that they are not even feeling it, if we are going to be honest. And then here we are seeing that this doesn't make sense. And we're not even talking about individuals selling. We're talking about households, families getting 8,000 naira. And in a typical Nigerian family, we have average of 5 people in that family. We're the smallest, 3, 4. But if we're going to go with an average that is most likely the number, we're talking about the minimum of 5 people in a family. And you're thinking
That's if you don't have extended family.
if you don't,
even.
exactly, if we're going to follow that, and you're talking about 8,000 for 6 months, that is every month. You're not talking about weekly. We're talking about per month, and you're seeing that we are having our lawmakers having 70 billion, and you wonder what is the rationale used to give this palliative and these funds in the first place. And then I'll keep saying it, Sele, I'm yet to see our government really feeling our pains or doing what they should do in order to make us know that yes, they are feeling our pain, because we can't wrap our head around this, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all to the common Nigeria, and of course it doesn't look like it is going to help any hardship at all. It doesn't. If this is what will be going to a household, then I believe that this is just another way of the government putting more in their pocket rather than helping the common Nigerian.
Well, Rachel, the government say they're sending it through transfer, so it's actually coming with immediate effect. But really, I just hope that the House can go back and have a rethink about this decision. Yes,
so.
it has already been approved, but then what happened after this 8,000 naira? Because believe you me, Rachel, these are things that give birth to more chaos, violence, and name them whatever form they come. Because why? Because I keep saying a hungry man is an angry man. And I'm not pushing or inciting violence in the heart of anyone, but I'm just calling the attention of our government to things that are happening. Already we're having pockets of issues left, right, and center. So I just hope that the government will actually have a rethink. I just hope that this 8,000 naira is separate from the increase of the minimum wage that the labor is actually pushing for. We're still yet to hear the response concerning that, whether the House has kicked against that or not. So we'll just keep our fingers, crossed, and hope that something positive will come out of that. Well, I think that's all on the Friday leadership. Or that was the last paper we took, which was the Daily Sun. All right, sorry. We'll be taking the first newspaper at this moment. Senate confirms service chief and others appointment. We have the picture stories of the service chiefs. Also, 70 billion naira approved for National Assembly in supplementary budget. We have already charged Emefiele to court, coming from the DSS. You can find that story on the First News newspaper. Kogi SDP Guba candidate alleged threat to life by Governor Yahaya Bello. You can find more of that story inside the paper. The big story for the First News says Senate reps approved Tinubu's 500 billion naira request for palliative within 24 hours. Tinubu declares state of emergency on food security, and that's in regards to making sure that there's food available, seed and also fertilizer for farmers. But I hope that they will be able to make the farmland, safe for Nigerians, because even when you give them fertilizer and the farmlands are not safe, farmers cannot go to the farm to actually farm. So we look forward to seeing proactive measures. And I just hope that, just like the army said yesterday, Rachel, the fact that they should give them a free hand to deal with these terrorists, they have been confirmed by the Senate now. So we are hoping that they will be given the liberty to actually deal with these bandits, so we can have our farmers going back, and then with that we'll be able to protect and also have food in the land again. So we hope for that as well. Still on the First News, we have LP demand INEC chairman dismissal, commission probe. Commission dismiss call, says it's ridiculous. You can find details inside the paper. And we also have China begins studies in Yoruba, produce first textbook. Wow, that's great. You can find detail in the paper. Ekiti Chief Judge hospitalized as court wall collapses on him. That's sad. You can find that inside the paper. And on the issue of sport, Nigeria to battle Benin and also South Africa for 2026 FIFA World Cup ticket. You can find detail of the story, and that's all on the First News newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, National Assembly approves 819 billion naira for subsidy palliative and projects. Dangote Cement plans new plant in Nigeria, Ghana, and others. Service chiefs get Senate not vow to tackle insecurity. The big story on the paper, food shortage. Tinubu declares state of emergency, plans 500,000 hectares farmland. The writer flowing the story, President orders year-round farming, releases fertilizer, grains to farmers and households. Security agents deployed to farms as federal government plans transport, concessionary loans for farmers. You can find the details on page 2. At the downside of the paper, EU report, opposition demands INEC chairman prosecution, APC films. Apostle Suleiman meant to be killed during attack, a statement coming from a suspect. 13 Chinese nabbed for illegal mining in Kwara. You can find the details on page 15. We have a picture story where we can see Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, training with New Zealand and Nigerian mixed martial arts star Israel Adesanya in preparation for a planned cage fight with the chief executive officer of SpaceX and Tesla and Twitter owner Elon Musk on Thursday. And that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, Emefiele has been charged, says DSS. Nigerians can now receive diaspora remittance in Naira coming from the CBN. And we have House of Reps to get 70 billion naira from Tinubu's 500 billion naira palliative fund. You can find detail in the paper. Still on the 500 billion naira palliative, 12 million households to get 8,000 naira for 6 months, says Tinubu. President Bola Tinubu has disclosed that 8,000 naira will be paid to 12 million Nigerian families for 6 months to cushion the effect of petrol subsidy removal, which you can find inside the paper. And on food security, Tinubu declares state of emergency. And we have EFCC arrests 13 Chinese nationals over illegal mining activities. So we really have to applaud the EFCC for a job well done. We hope they keep doing that. Still on the paper, NCAA suspend Max Air domestic flight indefinitely. Also, enough is enough. We are taking our country back. Tinubu assured Nigerian women. We hope to see him, getting them involved in nation building by giving some of the key position to women, because he promised them that. And we have to keep reminding him of his promises to the youth and to the women. So we hope to see him doing just that. And that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On Nigerian Tribune, Labour Party, INEC boss in war of words. And Guinness World Record, my body failed me after 50 hours of giving massages, coming from Joy Ijoma. You can find the details on page 16. Ekiti Chief Justice hospitalized as office collapses. The big story on the paper: fuel subsidy fallout, Tinubu declares state of emergency on food security. 500,000 hectares mapped out for use. National Commodity Board coming to review, assesses food prices. President says security agencies will protect farmlands. MFA charged to court coming from DSS. While we suspended Max Air Boeing 737 from operations coming from NCAA. AFCC arrests 13 Chinese nationals over alleged mining activities in Kwara. Lagos airport cable theft, more heads to roll as fan makes minor reshufflement. You can find the details on page 30. Still on Nigerian Tribune, organized labor NBF Atiku orders kick over 8,000 naira monthly for 12 million households. The writer phone story: Nigerians don't need cash distribution coming from labor and NBF. It's an attempt to divert public funds, Atiku alleges. 8,000 naira palliative for households sub-optimal coming from an expert. Senate approves $800 billion loan request from Tinubu. You can find the details of all of the stories on page 23, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Guardian newspaper, starting with good governance, which is the caption for the big story. Despite huge revenue, Lagos local council underperformed worst resident pains. You can actually see a picture of some of the flooding, potholes, and all of that that's making it quite very unbearable for residents in Lagos State. So you can read the big story on page 4 and 5 to get more. Still on the Guardian newspaper, DSS charges Emefiele to court after judge issue one-week ultimatum. You can find on page 3. And we have 346 persons killed, 18,751 displaced in Plateau State. Police nab father for selling 3 children 1.5 million naira in Rivers. That is the height of hardship and wickedness. But we hope that a probe will be done, and I hope that the kids will be brought back and also kept in a safe place. Still on the Guardian newspaper, Labour Party, INEC duel over call for dismissal, persecution of Yakubu. And we have Labour Atiku slam National Assembly speedy approval of Tinubu's $800 million loan and a 500 million naira palliative. You can find in the paper. Still, we also have the story on the issue of the Max Air, which you can find on page 7, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Daily Independence, starting with the big story: stolen airfield lightning, stakeholders finger insider threat, says airports at risk. The writer flowing the story: worry caused by airlines, lessors, and other organizations may rise. And we have report indict workers, NCAA may downgrade airport. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 29. Lawyers Ohanese's youth orders Hill Court ruling on Emefiele. DSS finally charges Emefiele to court. Federal government laments vandalism of 3-month-old second Niger bridge. Tinubu seeks Senate's approval for $800 million World Bank loan, says 12 million Nigerians to get 8,000 naira for 6-month period. Request for 500 billion naira to cushion effects of fuel subsidy cut. NCAA suspend Max Air B737 aircraft, raises team to audit airline. I don't operate security vote in Imo, says Uzodinma, 6 more powers for governors to tackle insecurity. Dangote cement to increase capacity with new plans in Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana. You can find the details on page 6. Why Tinubu declares state of emergency on food security, coming from the presidency. The writer says to establish ranches, revamp storage facilities and warehouse. Set to establish National Commodity Board to review food prices. At the downside of the paper, Tinubu assures on retrieving Nigeria from vested interest. And that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On New Telegraph newspaper, starting with gas, Nigeria is the 7th global LNG exporter, which you can find inside the paper. Still on the New Telegraph newspaper, we have investment in First Bank aim at enriching stakeholders, which you can find on page 8. Still on the paper, we still have Senate confirmed Major General Musa Lagbaja, 2 others as service chief, which you can find on page 3 and 28. Let's think outside the box to resolve Nigeria's problem, coming from Abbas, which you can find on page 5 and 28. Stay at home in Southeast criminal, coming from Peter Obi. You can find detail as well. Court dismisses Kanu's fundamental rights suit against DSS. And the big story for the paper is on subsidy palliative. Tinubu's government to pay 12 million poor household 8,000 naira monthly for 6 months, declare state of emergency on food and security. Assure farmers of safety as Senate approved the 500 billion naira. That is talking about the $800 million also for social safety net. Advocate 70 billion naira as grant to the National Assembly, and then NAS reject the fee hike in tertiary institution, which we saw from the past 2 days.
Yes.
The issue of hike of tertiary institutions, some of from the state, the federal, and also medical student. And we've also seen from the paper here, NAS are actually rejecting that. We hope to hear that the House, even though, even I think we saw when the House also as we caution the hike of all of that. So we hope to see how this whole story will unfold. So you can continue to read that on page 2 and 3. Still a New Telegraph newspaper, we have 80 rescued Chibok girls now in tertiary institution, coming from the federal government. You can find on page 5. Federal judges badly treated after retirement, coming from Justice Taiwo. You can find on page 26. Court give DSS 7 days to release Emifele. We have charged the ex-CBN governor to court, coming from the DSS. Also, Demami Tinubu seek more powers for governors to tackle insecurity. Appointment for the Southeast leaders, Ohaneze to meet president. You can find that on page 5. We also have a study which you can do well to read detail on page 26. We have a picture story too showing the governor of Lagos State. You can do well to get the paper and get detail of that story. But before we move to the next one, we'd love to take a break. Quite a lot to chew. 8,000 naira for 12 million household. President declaring food emergency, state of emergency for food security. And quite a lot on the papers. Also, court is telling the DSS to release Emifele. So a lot to actually talk about. So when we come back from the break, we will open the lines and then we hear what your thoughts are. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Equa Television International. And before we went on the break, we're looking at some of the very important stories or some of the big stories that have been making it on the paper, which we've seen that the House have actually approved the 500 million naira and also the $800 million for palliative to actually cushion the effect. And the government is planning to send 8,000 naira to 12 million households. He has also declared state of emergency on food security. So we'd love to hear what your take is. What is your thought about this? What do you think? How would this affect the economy at a time like this? And just like the organized labor said, that it is laughable and ridiculous So we'd love to hear what your own thoughts are. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us on our number that is displayed on your screen at this moment. And please, let's also remember to be very civil with our language, regardless of the emotion. Please do be mindful of your language when you call us on the show. I say have Rachel Tanzi with me. Thanks so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's go to the next paper, please.
On this day newspaper, MOFI moves to unlock idle assets to achieve 100 trillion naira capital target. Mulls National Assets Registry to reset economy. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 5. Hours after judge's directive, DSS announces charging Emefiele to court. You can find the details on page 10. Coming from the president at 89, showing car remains brother, comrade in struggle. Describes him as an inspiration, praises Mrs. Adeboye at 75. Sanwo-Olu also greets Nobel laureate. You can find the details on page 5. The big story on this day newspaper, Tinubu declares state of emergency on food security, says National Commodity Board coming to review food prices, declares security agencies will protect farmers and farmland. Senate approves Tinubu's 500 billion naira request to provide palliatives to vulnerable Nigerians, OK's $800 million loan request to fund 819 billion naira 2022 supplementary budget. Approved 70 billion naira to support senators and reps working conditions. Articles 8, Tinubu's palliative of 53 naira per day is an avenue to divert public funds. You can find more details on page 5. We have climate change, green Great Wall is an emergency rescue mission, says Shetima. You can find the details on page 17. And we have a picture story at the Business Day CEO Forum of 2023 in Lagos, where we can see stakeholders and we can see the president of the African Development Bank and others and how to grow the economy. And that's all on this day newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, NCDBM to issue policy to boost in-country manufacturing of pumps, valves, and others. You can find on page 4. The big story, 500 billion naira subsidy palliative, which we have here, federal government to distribute 8,000 naira monthly to 12 million households. The right of following that stories approves distribution of 500,000 hectares fertilizers and grains to farmers. Reps approved Tinubu's 500 billion naira request, and also Tinubu seeks Senate approval for $800 million World Bank loan. You can find on page 4. Sanwo-Olu unbundles Lagos health sector, creates 6 primary health districts for approved coverage. You can find detail on page 2. Court orders DSS to release Emefiele in 7 days. And we have SMEs, customers, loan Polaris Bank for sponsorship of fashion. So you can find that story in the paper. And on internal security, police recovered 350 illegal firearms, 4,055 ammunitions. You can find more inside the paper, and that's all on Nigerian News Direct.
On sweet crude reports, we have on oil, Nigeria owing traders $3 billion for oil swaps. And on gas, oil firms pay 71.6 billion naira as gas flaring penalties in 2022. This is a report. You can find the details on page 7. And on finance, oil producing states gets 22.86 billion naira derivation revenue in May. You can find the details on page 23. Quran seeks more investment in modular refineries in Nigeria. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 15. The big story on sweet crude report, stakeholders advocate NNPC listing on stock exchange. Advisory council targets billions for company. National oil firms misses the second quarter target for IPO. You can start with the details on the front page. We have a graph showing this information and also a table showing the updates on monthly bucket prices. And you can find more details inside on page 4, and that's all the news on Sweet Crude Reports.
All right, let's take a look at the world of business from Business Day newspaper. CEOs outline steps to make Nigeria economy giant, with the writer saying African Development Bank boss call for industrial revolution. MTN chief says sustainable digital economy key. Biggest challenge is dysfunctional education system, coming from Obaseki, which is the governor of Edo State. Shell wants bottlenecks in oil sector removed. You can find more of that story on the front page and continue to read more. Now we see the reason for the picture story here. These are part of the thing that was discussed there. Still on Business Day newspaper, pension for mortgage promises hit hurdles. You can find more inside the paper. Cheaper fund for firms as interbank rate falls sharply. Egypt overtakes Nigeria as African tech funding slows. And Dangote and others to speak at Olawuni Ajayi Summit on Tuesday. And that's all on the paper. But the issue of Egypt overtaking Nigeria's African tech funding slows, I think is really something for us to talk. Just when we're happy that we've overtaken Angola in the oil, and then here we're seeing Egypt have overtaken us. And I think it's high time we sit down, because I remember part of the thing that was being discussed for the ministerial appointment was the fact that they said let's have about 60% technocrats and then about 40% politicians, because we know that the world is gradually becoming a digital market, and then it's important that Nigeria is not left behind. I remember you and I have always complained on the fact that when things are moving, Nigeria is still backward. We're supposed to be working in a very advanced stage by now, but then we're still analog in some of the way we do things. Even looking at our census, till date we are yet to have a final date, even though the president promised that it will take place this year. But then we're yet to hear that. And then even when other countries are running on other tech things, we're still backward and still using analog ways. And then here we've seen that Egypt have taken over because of funding is slow. So I do not know what some of our tech companies are hoping to do, but then I hope that the government will also have back them up, and then let's see a synergy so that Nigeria can also work. Let us see that we don't even have to import other machines to come into the country. We can actually do that here in the country, our mobile phones and all of that. We have the brains, but all Nigerians right now are missing is the funds. So I hope that we'll begin to see that. I mean, on social media, we've seen various people, making some electric cars for their project. We've seen various things, moving to show that we have the brains, but what is lacking is the funding from the government. So we hope to see a backing coming from the government to actually help all these techs and people who have interest in that, so we can see our country also moving in the same pace as other countries.
Sally, I'm not over exaggerating it when I say that we are light years behind when it comes to technological advancement. And the more you look at it, you feel like, when are we going to get there? And for you to get there, you have to put things in place. You see, when it comes to the digital market, the online world, and how things are evolving technologically, most especially when it comes to online making money and all of that, the digital world and the digital experts and everything technology digital wise, it is a system that don't even need technocrats at that point. It just needs the government to make policies that makes room for growth in that space. We don't need to have a minister of technology before we advance in that field. That's how standalone that sector can be. That's how well it can grow on its own. Because when you look at countries rather that have embraced digitalization to the mass, you find out that the government of that country are not the ones leading in this space. So let's be honest, it's more of private individuals. And however, the government plays a role by putting in things and policies in place that gives room for the country to advance in that area. And that's one way that I see that our government being backward. We can look at the area of blockchain, in as much as it is a tricky and a slippery one. how the Nigerian government handled it is not how other government are handling it. And it's tricky because it gives room for a lot of things because nobody owns that technology. Nobody has the monopoly of that. Although there are those who have the monopoly of that space, we have oligarchs that are taking charge and control of that space. Still yet, I see the government going about it the way that other people that have banked on it are not going about it that way. And I keep saying that it's all about making it possible. One way is our educational curriculum, Sele. When you see countries that have advanced technologically in the digital, you find out that for years, not today, decades ago, they have made it part of their school system. And we've joked about it so many times that who knows that perhaps the phones we're using is just a science project for some school
Primary
kid in
school or
China. Or
secondary school.
yes, we've joked
Yeah.
about that several times. So if we think that a school child can do something like that, we have graduates in Nigeria, science graduates, engineers, we have electronic engineers, we have
Biochemical
that can't
engineers
do
and all
any
of
of that
that.
in Nigeria. So what does that say to us? That we are not truly ready. We might say we are ready, but we have not put anything in place to show that we are ready to advance technologically with the way others have gone way ahead of us. That's why I feel like we're light years behind. And why are the funding slow? Because I keep saying this is one sector that can fund itself because of how fast it grows. If only the government can put things in place, this shouldn't even be a challenge in the first place. Let's start by upgrading our school curriculum. Let it be that in the next few years to come, we will have primary school students doing science projects that another country can say, this can be, maybe our neighboring African countries can say, this looks like a science project of a high school kid in Nigeria or something like that. Until we put things in place that can take us to that level, we will keep seeing a slow growth when it comes to the digital and the digital market and all of that. But then let's wait and see what this government, this current administration have for Nigeria. And I truly hope that they will do the right thing and put things in place that will make it possible for this type of growth selling.
No, Richard, it just took my mind back to the issue of our curriculum in the school.
Yes.
And the need to introduce ICT, let's have computer-based tests and all of that. Of course, you will recall that when we wrote JAM, it was manually, but right now the JAM has gone to
Yes.
be like you have to use the computer system for most of that. And then gradually, and just like you make the very valid point, the fact that let's take it back to our school. But we've seen over the years, and even just recently on the papers, how schools are complaining funding is not enough.
Funding
Even
is
our
not.
tertiary institutions
It's not.
that are supposed to get funding are not really getting the fund that they need, and no one that threats on the paper on them hiking tuition fee so they'll be able to meet up a certain demand. Because ideally, not the reality we're seeing now. Ideally, in a tertiary institution, most of the schools are students are supposed to be in the school environment, not outside. So that will also even kill the number of insecurity we're having, that off-camp students were being kidnapped and killed and all of that. So if we're going to even look at the tech system seriously to introduce it into our curriculum, the government really needs to do a lot. And just like you said, this is a sector that can actually, fund itself by itself if you give it the relevant attention that they need. But we're still struggling with insecurity. We're still yet to get robbers that have been causing chaos and causing confusion, yet the communications already have the names of those people. We're still backward in that area, because it's expected that if you have the name, it's easy for you to track that issue. So there are so many ways that we already have it, but I just don't know what the problem is. Are we slow in actually catching up on what the issue is? But just like you say, let us see what it will look like. Let us give the government or Nigeria the next 5-10 years and see how our digital system will look like.
Yes.
Well, and then I think that's all on the Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, ahead Miami unveiling controversial song awaits Messi. You can find the details on the back page. Unit striker like Osimhen Ogbonlaha tells Chelsea. Vinicius Jr. gives testimony over racism case. You can find the details at the back page. Kamavinga settles for Ghanaian traditional dance. Dele Alli weeps. Open up on alcohol and molestation. Juvie shops for Pogba's replacement. PSG desperate to have Kane. You can find the details inside the paper. Grealish drills self in Dubai. Captaincy war hit Man United. Italian giants at war over Lukaku. Barca not keen on Premier League move. In 2024, NPFL champions to earn 150 million naira jackpot. You can find the details on page 6. Eyima's long-standing record survives as Zambian goalkeeper retires. At the downside, we have I learned nothing from ex-coach coming from Anthony Joshua. You can find the details at the back page. And we have the big story that says Raw threatens Super Eagle as Benin, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Rwanda, Lesotho draw Nigeria. This is on the 2026 World Cup ticket. And we see that Nigeria have to fight South Africa, Benin to get their spot on the table. And that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the TBS Friday paper, which is the last paper we'll be taking for today. Gross reserve now $23.5 billion officially. You can take a look at the foreign exchange reserve there in Bangladesh and how it's actually affecting the threshold there, where we see a column that says as the central bank adopts new calculation, net reserve falls by $4.24 billion short of the IMF threshold. So you can find detail of that story on the front page and inside the paper as well. U.S. to support inclusive and democratic Bangladesh, and also we have the Prime Minister retaliates commitment to holding a free, fair, neutral election. We're having elections very soon there, so you can do well to read detail of that paper. We also have here where the country is booming with the advancement of development. Let us sustain the continuity of development under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister. This is actually come from the President and Managing Director. So you can do well to get more of the issues happening in Bangladesh and also their economy and how we can actually relate to our country too as well. And that's all on the paper. Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. Thank you so much to our viewers. Thank you to our supporters, the crew members. Also grateful to the general manager and also to the executive. Until we come here again, please do remember to be peaceful and have a blessed weekend ahead. Goodbye for now.